Welcome to Sketchbook Legends. I'm your artist, Paul Hostetler. Today we are drawing the mascots for the Cartoonists United. Well, I guess you could call it a trade union. It is the only union that I know of for independent cartoonists. I do know that the image artists, the artists who work for Image Comics, recently created a trade union for themselves. But for those of us who are unaffiliated with any specific publisher, Cartoonists United is the best we got, so I'm drawing their mascots. The official version of these mascots is not at all in the same style that I'm drawing here. It's an inkwell and a quill pen, anthropomorphized, so they have little faces. They're kind of chibi looking. If I had to characterize it anyhow, I'd say they're kind of like Betty Boop style, the old-timey cartoons with the big googly eyes and chubby cheeks. I also decided to go kind of old school. Rather than Betty Boop, I went with kind of an anarchic Ren and Stimpy, Tex Avery, energetic cartoon style. You can see I've got the ink pot there with his big vertical button eyes. There are so many of these cartooning shorthands that don't really have names. I'm not sure what to call it when you draw eyes in the style of just a vertically aligned kind of dot. Because you see that and it's a reasonably popular way to draw, but there's no real terminology for it because cartooning just takes so much damn time that we get together very rarely, and when we talk shop, it's usually more about tools than about style, just because there's such a wide variety of styles that it's sometimes hard to find common ground. I know that Mort Walker, the cartoonist who made Beetle Bailey and High and Lois, came out with a lexicon of cartoon terms that he just made up on the fly. Words defining the little squiggles inside of angry curse word balloons and the clouds that cartoon characters descend into when they start a fight. So if you ever wanted to know what the little clouds of dust in a cartoon are called, they're called briffets. The little sweat beads that pop off characters' faces, those are called ploods. And the thought balloons are technically termed cumulus fumetti. I don't think I've got any of those. One little addition that I did put onto my version of these mascots is that I gave the inkwell a cap. Pretty sure that the inkwell in the Cartoonists United official artwork has no cap. It's just an open inkwell available for use by the pen, but I figured I'd give him a jaunty little cap. Now, I can understand why they didn't want to use this particular style for their mascot. It does suggest, the way that I'm drawing it, it does suggest freewheeling anarchy of a particular type that you may not want to advertise yourself with if you're creating kind of a trade union or a social network. I've turned my version of the inkwell on the pen into cartoon characters with personalities. And not necessarily friendly personalities. You know, these two that I'm drawing have their own thing going on. They're not quite as welcoming or friendly as the official versions. But since I'm not being paid for this little illustration assignment, I get to make all of these sort of creative choices and go hog wild in whatever direction I so chose. And I decided to make these things a little less stranger friendly, a little less safe. I decided to take the ideas presented and carry them off outside a zone of security, if you will. I mean, it's not like I drew a penis or anything on any of them. These aren't X-rated. It's very much not quite a reproducible work of art that I'm creating here. Well, you can see that while I'm using my Kuretake brush pen, I started with pencils, and I made those pencils. Well, I suppose I can't really say whether they are loose pencils or tight. I certainly drew every part of what I intended to draw, from the mouth to the teeth to the little twitch on his left eye. But you can see an awful lot of extra marks where I was trying to get things right. That's de rigueur for me. I'm not the cleanest penciler, but it doesn't really matter since I am the only one who inks my own work. I don't employ other people to add the ink to my pencils, so I can be a little bit scrappier and smudgier. But I do like to put in as many details as I can because I've got a terrible memory, and I sometimes worry that if I forget to put in the correct number of fingers or teeth, that I won't end up inking those, or I'll have to go back and use some whiteout, which is just an extra step that I'd usually rather avoid. Drawing Mr. Penn was a little tricky, or inking him at least, since he's got those long, smooth aquiline curves on his nib holder. You don't want to mess that up. There are two ways of doing that. There's the Al Hirschfeld way, which is to do just like many small lines all together to create the illusion of a single unbroken, smooth, curving line. And then there's the method that I used here, which is sort of taken from my lessons doing sumi Japanese ink painting, which is to just draw the entire curve at once. It's a little bit more dangerous that way. You have to have supreme control of your pen, but it's also very satisfying to do when you do it right, and that's the high that I chase every time I do this sort of sketchbook. Mr. Ink, I don't know why he's so angry. It just seemed like the sort of emotion a razor-sharp nib would have. I'm betting that Evan Dorkin's milk and cheese characters were on my mind when I drew this out. If you didn't know, Evan Dorkin's milk and cheese are just two characters Milk, who's a carton of milk, and Cheese, who's an orange block of cheddar cheese. They have massive eyebrows, big mouths. They are angry all of the time. And in a variety of situations, Dorkin just drops them into and lets them cause mayhem. One of them usually ends up having a broken wine bottle in his hand as an offensive weapon. Very violent, vulgar little cartoons, but also extremely, well, I'd say classic. I'd say classic is the word. Milk and Cheese are classic cartoons. Why I'm not drawing Milk and Cheese, why I'm drawing ink and pen instead? Well, I guess it's because Evan Dorkin doesn't have a social network set up. I'll probably get around to Milk and Cheese eventually. I've got some water droplets, some ink droplets, or as Mort Walker would say, some plutes coming off of Mr. Ink. You can see when I have to add some details, I go more of the Hirschfeld method. Al Hirschfeld, in case you didn't know, famous caricaturist, known for his swooping lines and his very, iconic likenesses. But all those swooping lines, if you take a look, they are not a single brush stroke. They're made of many tiny little scratches on the paper. I still don't know how he did that. You'll notice that the physics don't exactly line up in the way the legs attach to the bodies on Mr. Inkwell there. But that's one of the benefits of working in a cartoony style, is that you don't have to worry so much about how things are put together. This isn't animated. We don't need to do turnarounds. This is a single image, and it can be whatever it wants to be. I always like to give my characters either teeny tiny feet or big old floppy feet. I figured Mr. Ink here gets big old floppy feet. Otherwise he'd be top heavy and he would fall over. One art question that I haven't sorted out for myself is that the inside of Mr. Ink's mouth is black. His teeth are white, but he is also a black bottle. So there's a little conundrum in how to draw the blackness of the bottle in a way that's separate from the blackness of the inside of his mouth. There are certainly ways to do that. There are multiple ways. I have a feeling I won't decide which way to go until I actually reach that exact point. You can tell, though, with the eyes that I'd already decided on that. I was just gonna outline them in black and have them show up on the face as white lines. That's pre-planned. If it doesn't turn out well, I'll try using whiteout. There is a point when making a character with a black face when, as a cartoonist, I worry a little bit about portraying the character in blackface. This is not unfounded. Most of the classic cartoon characters from the 20s, 30s, and 40s are in fact based on blackface performances. Felix the cat is black with white eyes and a mouth. That's definitely based on blackface. Mickey Mouse, the same. He's intended to be a minstrel performer, an anthropomorphic minstrel mouse, at least in his first appearances. I've got to take a little bit of care here with this character. I sort of backed myself into a corner with this one. I wasn't thinking too much before I started with the design, but here I am, and I'm doing my best. I honestly do think that minstrelry counts as a legitimate art form, but you just cannot do that anymore. You can't do minstrelry, you can't do blackface, for the same reason that you can't name your kid Adolf. Assholes throughout history have ruined that name and that art form for the foreseeable future. Best just to shut it down. Alright, I've got a little squiggle of ink coming out of his head, just to make sure that you know that Mr. Ink is an ink bottle and not some other sort of just generic black bottle. The way I'm drawing this ink swirl is almost calligraphic. I think that a study of calligraphy is a boon to any graphic artist. And it sort of pains me that they don't teach cursive in schools anymore. It is truly an art form, and, you know, if they're going to teach recorder and they're going to teach them coloring, they might as well be teaching them cursive. Probably get more use out of that than learning trigonometry. Here comes the coup de grace. I get to use my spare toothbrush to throw some ink splatter. Note that the way that I'm orienting the toothbrush determines how the ink splatter lands. It behooves any illustrator to have a variety of instruments and tools at their disposal, and to know what they're capable of. Just for a little something different, a little different texture, we'll use the remnants of that ink to create a little ground shadow. But that's Mr. Ink and Mr. Pen. They don't have actually an assigned gender, so we'll just call them Ink and Pen. If you liked this video, please click the like button and the subscribe button. And if you want to get notified when new videos drop, click the bell button. You can find me elsewhere on the internet at P. Hostetler Art. That's the letter P, Hostetler, on Blue Sky, on Patreon, on Ko-Fi. On those last two, you can drop me a few bucks if you think that I've earned it. So stay sketching, stay legendary, and see you next time.